Well, we turn now to the second part of our interview with legal scholar, civil rights advocate, and author Michelle Alexander. Her book is The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. Former director of the Racial Justice Project at the ACLU of Northern California, she now holds a joint appointment at the Kirwan Institute for the Study of Race and Ethnicity and the Moritz College of Law at Ohio State University.
We continued yesterday's interview with Michelle Alexander after the broadcast, and we started with a clip of President Obama's speech at the NAACP Centennial Celebration last year.
We've got to say to our children, yes, if you're African American, the odds of growing up amid crime and gangs are higher. Yes, if you live in a poor neighborhood, you will face challenges that somebody in a wealthy suburb does not have to face. But that's not a reason to get bad grades. That's not a reason to cut class. That's not a reason to give up on your education and drop out of school. No one has written your destiny for you. Your destiny is in your hands. You cannot forget that. That's what we have to teach all of our children. No excuses.
Michelle Alexander, no excuses. Can you respond to President Obama?
Well, I think, a major point that is often lost in debates about the so-called underclass, poor African Americans who are trapped in racially segregated ghettos. The point that's often missed is that huge percentages of the people residing in those communities have been branded felons, and therefore discrimination is perfectly legal against them. Employment discrimination is perfectly legal. Most job applications, ranging from Burger King clerk to accountant, ask whether you've been convicted of a felony. And studies show that, about 70% of employers say they won't even consider hiring someone who's been convicted of a drug felony. Public housing is off limits to you if you've been convicted of a felony. For a minimum of 5 years, you are deemed ineligible for public housing once you've been branded a felon. Discrimination in private housing markets, perfectly legal. So here you are, recently released from prison, having been branded a felon for engaging in precisely the kind of drug activity that's ignored in middle-class white communities. You're branded a felon, you can't get a job, and then public housing is off limits to you. Where are you expected to sleep? So an aunt or grandmother takes you in. Now, let's say you're one of the lucky few who managed to get a job. Well, up to 100% of your wages can be garnished. That's right, up to 100% of your wages can be garnished to pay the costs of your imprisonment. Increasing numbers of states are requiring former prisoners to pay back the cost of their imprisonment, pay back court costs, court processing fees, even the cost of their representation, even if they've been assigned a public defender, and back child support. You're required to pay back all the accumulated child support that you incurred while you were in prison. So up to 100% of your wages can be garnished, even if you're one of the lucky few who managed to get a job after being branded a felon. What is the system designed to do? The system is designed to send you right back to prison, which is, in fact, what happens to the vast majority of people who are released. About 70% of former prisoners are returned within 3 years. And the majority of those who are returned within 3 months, because the obstacles, the legal barriers to just surviving on the outside are so great. People often say to me, well, I know somebody who is a felon and who managed to get a job. It's possible to get a job, they say. Well, it may be possible, but what kind of job? Why is it that, our young kids, young black and brown kids, are expected to be locked into low-wage jobs for life if they're lucky enough to get them? But kids in other communities are given the opportunity to go on to college, to compete for a full range of job opportunities. During the Jim Crow era, the problem wasn't that black people couldn't get jobs. It was that they were locked permanently in a lower tier of jobs. And that's the reality. That's the reality. For us to tell young African American kids in ghetto communities, your destiny is in your own hands, that may be an inspirational message. But for many of them, it may turn out to be a lie. because the rules and laws that govern ghetto communities today and the war that is being waged there ensures that a large majority of black and brown boys in those communities will be branded felons and then relegated to a permanent second-class status for life.
Michelle Alexander, I'd like to ask you about Arnold Schwarzenegger. Governor Schwarzenegger at his State of the State address in January called for privatizing some of the state's prisons.
The priorities have become out of whack over the years. I mean, think about it. 30 years ago, 10% of the general fund went to higher education, and only 3% went to prisons. Today, almost 11% goes to prisons, and only 7.5% goes to higher education. Spending 45% more on prisons than universities is no way to proceed into the future.
Your reaction to Governor Schwarzenegger's newfound concern about the situation with the prison system in his state?
Yes, well, many people reacted with glee to Governor Schwarzenegger's kind of apparent embrace of the books not bars theme that had been a rallying cry for grassroots organizations in the state for more than a decade. But if you read between the lines there, what Schwarzenegger is actually saying is not that we should change our laws to ensure that nonviolent drug offenders don't end up spending years or decades behind bars, or that we should rethink harsh mandatory minimum sentences or our 3 strikes laws, which have been responsible for the prison boom in California and other states around the country. His remedy has not been to reduce prison populations through kind of rethinking draconian laws, but instead to privatize, try to save money, make warehousing and caging human beings cheaper by privatizing the system. Certainly, this announcement must have been met with glee on Wall Street, where, many companies like the Correctional Corporation of America, is making millions of dollars and hopes to expand its market of caging human beings for a profit. So sadly, although Schwarzenegger embraced the books not bars motto, what he actually plans to do in practice is, or may well be, worse than the system that we have today.